All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Detour podcast, where we talk about all things related to the topic of unconventional success and upcomings. I'm your host, Gary Fan, a community college alumni with aspirations of becoming a world-changing business owner. This episode marks episode 3 within the first season of the podcast, and today I'm proud to present a very special guest, an international student, a former art history honors classmate of mine, and a dear friend of mine as well, Ami Suzui.
Hi. Yeah, I'm so happy to be able to special guest, I guess, on this podcast. So nice meeting you guys on the podcast listeners. All right. So should I just introduce myself?
Yeah, so tell me a bit about yourself and or the viewers a little bit about yourself and what you're studying in.
All right. Okay, so obviously you know my name. My name's Ami, and I was born in the States, but I'm Japanese, but I grew up mainly in the States, but then I kept going back and forth from Japan to the US. And for college, I just decided to come to the States study in the States. But my parents are now currently in Japan. So, and also I'm studying in communication studies. And my dream of mine is to become an event coordinator because I've always loved to manage stuff. But that's a very broad description of myself. I don't know what else to mention.
No, that was great. That was great. So I remember we talked a lot about your journey here to California and stuff, and it's been a long ride for you, at least transitioning here and there. So how is that leap from going from school to school and then jumping all the way over to California by yourself? Because I know that's very unconventional. You don't see a typical community college student take that route that you have. So you're very unique in that respect.
All right. Okay. So mainly in terms of I guess there's international students, at community college. But one thing that made my situation a little different was the fact that I was an actual U.S. citizen. So I couldn't be considered fully international students. I'm not even considered an international student. Yeah. But the path that I went through is very similar to an international student. So taking that big leap was definitely a little different compared to some other students that might want to study abroad, just because I didn't have much of a lot of times I would call the school, and they were like, "Oh, you're a very rare, I guess situation. Yeah, we can't help you with that." Yeah. And it's no one could really help except for just kind of go with the flow. But that was a little bit hard. And in terms of adjusting to school, do you mean school as in college or in general?
Let's do in general, and then you can specify into community college and stuff like that.
So to go into depths about my school history, I basically, like I said, I kept going back and forth from Japan to the States, but I basically had my whole entire childhood in the States. But then for high school, I went to a Japanese high school. So there was definitely, the education system's different there. The culture is different there. So it was if anything, it was more hard for me to adjust to the Japanese school rather than the American, school that I had to go to. So I think my grades are really bad in high school because I knew Japanese. Don't get me wrong, I can speak Japanese, I can write Japanese. I have some level enough to be able to read, write, and speak. But I just didn't have enough for high school level Japanese students, which a lot of my classmates were already, very much well in those category. They could speak English and Japanese perfectly well, so I felt very inferior next to them. Yeah. Everyone's now I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, you can speak perfect English and Japanese." That's so cool. But to me, I just kind of grew up with people like that, and if anything, I wasn't even that good. So I think I had very low self-esteem in terms of speaking Japanese and speaking English. But working on that, I'm very much more confident in my bilingualness.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of like when you go to a different school and you learn a different language, you have like that kind of like low self-esteem thing you're gonna go through where you compare yourself with like other people, like they can do this, what makes me so special, even though it's already, you know, pretty interesting enough that you can talk fluently in like multiple languages. But that's kind of how it was for me in high school. And for college, I think because I had the prior experience of like living in the States, I definitely didn't have much problem living, you know, here, especially by myself. Although coming to California was my first time, because the previous years of living in the States, it wasn't in California, it was actually in Tennessee. So very different culture from California. If anything, I'm very surprised about like everything. The grocery stores, they have Japanese grocery stores. There's a big Asian community, which I didn't have in Tennessee. And it's just like a flight away. Like it's so close, which is like crazy to think, because when I lived in Tennessee, it was like more than a 20-hour plane ride.
That's crazy.
Yeah, now it's like only 9 hours.
Wow.
Very easy to get to California and back to Japan. So but so yeah, in college I was definitely it was just definitely easier compared to like maybe international students who come to the States for the first time, because they have language barriers, cultural differences. Although one thing I will say is maybe living by yourself probably was like a big thing for me. Now it's been 2 years. I'm pretty good, you know. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
I was just gonna ask about living by yourself and taking that leap over. Like, how did that feel? Like, I know that with your experiences coming back and forth from like Tennessee and Japan, you know, like you had your parents then, and how was that feeling when you first knew that, or when you first enrolled in those classes for OCC, which you're currently attending right now, right? Like, how is that feeling, knowing that, okay, I'm committed to this like path of going to California, going to community college, and I'm doing it alone?
Well, it was really scary, because like I didn't have a car. I didn't have, like, you know, I had like having no car was like the biggest thing, especially because California, you need especially SoCal, I think you need it. So maybe if you go to like San Francisco, you don't need it, but around here I think you need a car. And the first year I didn't have a car at all, so I would take the bus or Uber everywhere. And it's so scary, like going to like a 15-minute away school. It took me like a good hour, just because there's waiting time and you know everything. So that was definitely, and now I have my license and I'm driving around on the freeway, which is very scary. I think California freeways are very scary, but now I'm doing that and I feel very independent. So it is definitely scary though, because you don't have anyone who cooks for you. You don't have anyone who's gonna be there to help you whenever you have like some problem. And living situation was very, very difficult, because when the very first house that I lived in was a homestay, which is basically, if you don't know what a homestay is, it's when you live with someone else who's a host, and you just kind of live under their roof. So I had a very bad homestay, like a very beginning. I now moved out, so I'm good, but it was so bad, like I had to move out in the middle of the night because I had to pack in the middle of the night and then move out the next morning with my roommate, because my host was just so bad. She was just in such a bad condition that we felt really threatened to stay. And I had no one else to really talk to, because like my parents can't help me with that. I mean, I can tell my parents, but they can't do anything about it, and that would only make them kind of worry. So that was very hard. Housing, what else? Like, another thing is like in terms of like transferring some school, I'm considered a California resident, but because my parents don't live here in the States, I have to go through this whole process of residency, especially for like certain colleges. They have like much more strict requirements. So I can't get that in-state tuition even though I'm a resident. I mean, like I voted, I have my vehicle registration. You know, I have everything signed up, but because I haven't worked, which I just recently got a job, but because I didn't have a job, because I didn't have a car, how would I get a job, you know? Like, since I didn't have a job, I didn't pay taxes, and because my parents didn't pay taxes, I had to show proof that I pay for all the income. I have all the income and I pay for myself, which is kind of impossible to do when school is making you pay maybe 5 times the actual price when you're an international student. Yeah. That was really, and that I still have problems with that, which I'm trying to work on that. Yeah. But it's very annoying when I'm not an international student. I'm considered an American citizen. Yet I have to pay the same fee as an international student. And there's no way for me to get out of that because my parents aren't here, even though I've been here. Yeah. So that's a very annoying part, which I don't know, maybe I think definitely there's other people who struggle with that, but it's so annoying in terms of that. So I had to get a job ASAP, and I see all the international students are just having a lot of fun, and it's chilling, they're just chilling, you know, and then I'm just I have to go to work. So it's it's you know, it's especially it doesn't help when a lot of my friends are international students. So that's kind of a big thing for me. But other than that, I think a lot of my struggles are kind of similar to international students, you know, living away from your parents. You know, you have the freedom for sure. It's great. You can go home anytime you want to. No one's telling you what kind of food to eat. You know, I definitely do like that, but also sometimes I just don't want to cook. I don't want to. I feel that. I don't want to just it's kind of sad sometimes. You know, getting back. I visited home a couple of times, and when you come back, it's the worst feeling ever. You just have your luggage. You come back from LAX, and you're just I miss my family so much, and there's nothing you can do about it, but you just kind of have to pull through, because what else are you gonna do? You can't just cry about it the whole entire time. So homesickness is also another issue. Everyone goes through that, I think, but it's very, very sad.
I think that makes your case really unique, or as or two things. So I think the idea of having a job makes your case as an international student very unique, you know. It's like what you mentioned, you know, international students have this persona of having this kickback, relaxing vacation type vibe, you know. And you're out here really putting in the work, and you have to really work for your living conditions and such stuff like that. So I think that's very unique to your case as an international student.
I mean, also international students, they can't really work as well, so even if they wanted to work, that was another thing. Obviously there's students, you know, international students who are taking their education seriously. I mean, there's a lot of students like that, but I decided to take it in a positive way, where I have the chance to work in the States. So because I hear a lot of international students oh man, I wish I could work, but I can't. And I'm oh, I guess I should take that as a good thing, being able to work, not being oh, I have to work. Being able to think oh, I can work because I'm a citizen here. I felt that kind of changed my way. Now I feel very good about going to work because I'm driving on the freeway, going to work, getting my own money, paying my taxes, and it's just man,
your life together.
I'm my own little person who's an adult, doing adult things, you know. I mean, I still rely on my parents, of course, but I can see that I'm changing little by little in terms of independence, you know. So that's pretty cool.
Do you think the learning curve coming over to California, was it a huge learning curve that felt really impossible? And if so, how did you manage to get over that? Because I know you mentioned 2 years, right? So far it's been 2 years in California. Within those 2 years, what would you say what's the time frame of that learning curve that you had to go through to really get in this very stable and quote unquote normal feeling of living in California?
I think well, this is very specific, but
Yeah.
I think it's when I got my car, to be honest. Like, like that's like the first thing you do, you know?
Yeah.
But another thing is like, I don't know if you can call it a time frame, but I'd say like every document you do, you have to do it. It's like the pressure of like, I have to do it myself or no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
So it was like that pressure that kind of helped me become, go through that. After I think like a year or two, I think you'll get somewhat used to it.
Yeah.
But one thing I did notice, this isn't really this is more about like physical stableness, right? Like whether it's about getting a car or getting a job, But I did have like mental stableness as well. When I came to California, I had this like mindset of like, oh, I'm finally in America where I've always wanted to come back to. And I hated how I was like Japanese. I just wanted to get out of Japan.
Yeah.
And I finally got that, to happen. But now that I'm in California, I'm just like, man, I wish I knew more about my Japanese stuff. Like I wish I studied more about Japan. And I just kind of like appreciate way more the fact that I'm Japanese, because I used to hate myself for being Japanese. And my parents are very happy that I finally came to that conclusion, and I feel like that's one of the big steps of like being an adult or being independent. You get to kind of like, I got to finally learn what's really important. Like, I mean, I was like really, my parents must have been very disappointed because I had no desire to learn Japanese. I had no desire to like listen to music that were in Japanese. I had no desire to even like dress up like a Japanese person. Because there's Japanese styles and stuff like that. And I kind of noticed that now that I look back at it, like my high school self, when I was living in Japan, I was very much restricting myself from doing whatever I wanted to just because I thought it would make me Japanese. Because I hated being Japanese, which is kind of weird because like I am. But I wanted to stick to that American persona, which isn't good because I felt like I really restricted in whatever I wanted to do. And now that I'm here, I feel a lot more emotionally like free because I don't have to feel like I have to stick to that American army. Because like I'm already in America, like what else is there to stick, Like, and now I love Japan. I love talking about it. It's too bad that I don't know enough about it in terms of like history terms, because I didn't pay attention in class. But that was another thing. Like your perspective changes so much when you go abroad. It doesn't even have to be like the U.S. or Japan. Like anywhere you go, you're gonna meet new people. And the new people is what allowed me to rethink about that, because I've met people in California who are like, oh, I've never been to Japan. What is it like? And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, I lived there for a good years. And I don't know anything about it. And meeting new people helped me love myself more. So that's why I think going to a new area, doesn't even have to be a new country, going to a new state, new city, and meeting new people. I know it's like scary, but like it's such a big thing. I would recommend going somewhere different if you can, not that you have to, but if you can, and if you're, like financially capable of it, you should go somewhere new because it's such an experience.
I remembered you were telling me, or we had a conversation back then about like learning how to like really love like your culture and your background, your history, only like after growing up and like having like more experience, and like it's like a new founded perspective on like, dang, like I really love like who I am as a person now. And it like gives you a lot of perspective, because not a lot of people have like this opportunity to be like Japanese, or like be in like the state where, I don't know, like they have like this huge like culture behind them, and like I think growing up, like we were talking about how, having this is kind of like a blessing, it's like I'm unique, I'm cool, and like I'm gonna embrace that, so I think that's definitely like super cool about your experience and whatnot. And speaking about your experiences like in here in California, something that you added on to like that pressure and that hardship was a podcast as well. You started your own podcast yourself called Bilingual Buzz, like during like your journey here in California, right?
Yes.
And like I thought that was like super awesome because it's like you're going through like all these like hardships, like you have to figure out like how to really like situate yourself in California. And in addition to that, like you also like branched off and like started your own thing, which is like very admirable. You know, not a lot of people have that motivation, especially like international students. You know, like we talked about the persona that they have. You know, sometimes they're really quote unquote lazy or complacent and they feel like it's like a relaxation spot, you know. And you have that like drive to start like your podcast. And like, can you tell like the viewers and like the audience a little bit more about like your mentality coming into starting Bilingual Buzz, and like what was it like, and was it hard at first? But yeah.
Okay, so it originally started with so Bilingual Buzz is mainly hosted by me and then my friend Emily. We have been like childhood friends. We grew up together in the States. She lives in Japan and now I live in the States, but so I've known her for a very long time. So it all started with this Instagram account that I don't really have any affiliation with, but she does, and a couple of other I guess her coworkers, I don't know, some other friends of hers have created this Instagram account, and it's mainly for Japanese people who want to learn English, which is a very common, you know, content to have. But all the people who are running it are people like me who've lived abroad due to either their parents' business or they just lived in the States for an extremely long time. So a lot of times the audiences are very curious on how we learned English or how we grew up, or, you know, it's mainly like an English teaching place or Instagram account, but we also do like lifestyles and that kind of led to like how we grow up, how we think, and a lot of people are like interested in knowing more about like our history. So me and my friend were just like, okay, so why not do a podcast about talking all the topics that the audience wants to know about. So mainly we talk about we just kind of go with whatever we want to talk about, or whether, you know, our listeners request. And some things are like, we also talk about like social issues, just because now that I'm obviously like, I'm more curious, because I used to like not know anything about Japan, but now I'm curious, now that I can compare and contrast with like Japanese like political situation and American political situation, it's very interesting to see the difference of how each country like handles situations differently. And I just thought that'd be like a really interesting thing to just like be able to talk about it to both in English and Japanese.
The OC listeners.
OC listeners. So we were just like, we should do about that, or we can even talk about like one episode that I'm really excited about is going to be about our mom, because they had to go to the States carrying their little kids in a country that they've never even thought about going. My mom, she barely speaks English, but she's survived in the States for 12 years in Tennessee, which is like, it's not even California. So it's like, she can't even just go to like a Japanese community, you know, and talk Japanese. She just had like a lot of non-Japanese, non-Asian, if you can say so, around her. And it's just like, I'm even surprised by that, because at least I knew English. I grew up with it. But so a lot of audiences were also really interested in that, like, how did they get to the States, how did they learn English, how did they raise their kids, right? And so I'm pretty excited about that. We're going to be talking about that. So topics like that is kind of what we go through in our, I guess, Spotify or podcast. It's not Spotify, sorry, but that's kind of it though.
Wow. Would you say that like based off what you're talking about with your mom and stuff like that, do you think her experiences like inspired you to keep pushing forward, especially like living on your own now, like in California?
So good question. I actually never thought about that, but I think I very much do respect my mom though, because she
Yeah.
had to go through that. And I asked her, like, were you scared when you first? Because I remember right before going off to California, I asked my mom, like, were you scared when you went to America for the first time? And she was just like, I wasn't even scared because I was just too busy thinking about like what's gonna I have no idea what was gonna happen. I never even knew what America was. I was never really interested in the first place. I just heard about it. I know what America is. I couldn't even imagine the struggles I would be facing.
Yeah.
So I wasn't scared at all. If anything, it just, my head was kind of empty because I couldn't even imagine what I had to go through, which was a very interesting response that I got. And I was just like, okay, I guess, like, and that was like a good thing to think about, because a lot of people, they don't expect the kind of problems you'll be facing when you come to the States. That's when I started thinking, like, when I go to the States, I can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna be in the States, like, I'm so excited, you know? You can't just think like that, because I think you're gonna be facing with a lot of things, and then you gotta prepare yourself. At least that's how I think. But that made me think, like, okay, so when I get to the States, what if I have this issue? What if I have this issue? What would I do in that situation? I started, like, thinking about all these scenarios that I would go through, and I think that kind of helped me a lot, because I've heard many people where they just kind of imagine the American dream, you know, like that, going to America, which is fun, you know? But you're gonna face some issues, obviously, and it's, for me, I think it's a good idea to just kind of think a scenario in the head. Some people might not like that. It might just be like a pessimistic thing. But for me, that doesn't seem pessimistic. I think it's more optimistic, just because I'm preparing. So my mom's saying that, I couldn't even imagine what kind of struggles I have, definitely did help me think, okay, so what kind of struggles would I have? And kind of like prepare myself, like, you know, kind of scared but also excited at the same time. So that's kind of how it, I guess, my mom affected me in that way. But
wow, that's definitely awesome to hear that you know, your mom wasn't really scared, and it was kind of more of like consumed by the busyness of things.
Like, dang, Mom.
I feel like parents have like that persona that, you know, I'm tough, you know, I gotta be tough for my kids and stuff. But
she was saying that, she was like, I knew that, because I think it was just my brother when she came to the States, because I don't think I was even there yet. But she said that I knew I couldn't be scared in front of, like, your brother, because if I was being scared, I'm pretty sure kids can feel, you know, that emotion, because my mom's like a kindergarten teacher, so she loves kids and she knows about them well. And she was saying it's very true, when parents are like scared or nervous, kids can really feel that, even if you don't say anything. And I didn't want that to happen, so I just made sure I was never scared.
Wow.
Which is, what kind of control is that, you know? Like, I'm not going to be scared, so I just, like, that, how do you do that? But I don't know. I just thought that was pretty interesting.
I think I really resonate with that. It's like, you know, you have control of, like, how you feel, and, like, what, like, that feeling is, like, what that feeling transpires into, you know? And that idea of not being scared and entering, like, fearless, like, got your mom to, like, where she's today, you know? And how you are today is, like, based off how she was, and, like, it's this whole chain cycle, you know? And it's, like, very awesome to see how, like, you're doing in, like, California compared to, like, other, like, students as well, you know? It's very unique, you know? It's a very unique experience. And to kind of bounce off that, what, like, advice would you give to, like, someone that's going through this transfer process of, you know, like, being an international student, taking that leap of faith, you know, going, like, thousands of miles away from, like, their home, like, town, and, like, committing to, like, a spot?
Okay, so I don't know if mine would be a good advice, but one thing that did help me a lot is, because you're going to a new place, you're not going to have a lot of people, right, that you know, but just meet anyone you can meet. Like, just be friends with them. I mean, you don't have to be friends with them, but you just, like, be very engaged in, like, broadening your network. Because when I had to move out of my house, I didn't know who to contact, but I knew this, like, one person I just met, like, a week ago, and they were just, like, saying, oh, I have a place for you if you want to move out. Like, they just said that really just just, vaguely, and they're just out of nowhere. And I just had that, like, saying in my head. I was like, wait, hold on, I can contact that person.
Yeah.
And having, like, a little network you can, like, always rely on people is, like, a big thing if you don't have families around.
Yeah.
So if you're coming and transferring to a new area, meet new people. Also, another tendency that I see a lot is, in which I think I can be, I think I'm part of those people too, but they tend to stick with the same people.
Yeah.
And with, like, I don't know, you only talk with, like, the certain group of people, which, I mean, I get how comfortable it is. It's great, but it kind of beats, like, the whole purpose of, like, going to a new place.
Yeah.
You got to meet new people, because when you meet new people, you know more about yourself, and you know more people you can rely on, and it just helps you a lot overall.
Yeah.
So be more engaged in knowing other people. I think that's a big thing.
Like, one person is, like, all it takes,
Yeah, like, if I didn't move to that new person's place, I probably would have been, like, crying in the middle of the night, just, like, hating my life. So that's definitely, that's a big thing.
I think, that's definitely awesome to, going off of that, like, one person can really, like, change your life in a way, it just takes one person, and I think that's definitely super awesome.
It sounds really, like, cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah, right?
Like,
it is true.
Yeah, it's very true. Like,
yeah,
it's really true when people say, oh, you know more about yourself when you meet new people. Like, as corny as that sounds, like, it's so true.
Yeah.
So true.
No, I agree with you. I feel like some of, like, the corniest sayings, like, are, like, some of, like, the most realist, like, things out there.
Which is why it's a saying, though.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
True.
But no one really, you never really think about it until you actually go through and you're just like, dang, it's true. Like, it's really true. So, yeah, that's epic.
Yeah, well, you also had, like, a lot of, like, tie-in experiences with your major, with, like, communications as well, Speaking of, like, your job and, like, your podcast, like, this all revolves around, like, communications, So what tips would you give for, like, someone trying to pursue, like, that field? Like, let's say they're a high schooler or a transfer student. What advice would you give to them?
So, obviously, communication is a very broad major. I would definitely say so. And it's very easy to lose track of what you want to do because, like, I know a lot of people who are in communication, and I ask them, like, what do you want to do? And they're just like, I don't even know, but I'm just in this major.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't have it figured it out, I think that's okay too, but it makes your life easier because you're going to be studying, investing money in what you're learning. So you might as well want to narrow it down to what you want to learn about.
Yeah.
So I just say, like, do a lot of things so that you know what you want to do. Like, ever since I was a child, like, I've always loved kind of managing, and, like, I would do my stuffed animals and, like, be their manager, I'll pretend like they're a big pop star or something like that, and then, like, I'll make, like, events for them to attend, something like that. And I've always loved that as a kid. And I think that's kind of why I'm still, into, like, coordinating, managing, and stuff like that. So just try to know what you like, and also have a lot of experience. And I mean experience as in, like, try to find, like, a job that you can kind of correlate it to, which is, it can be hard, but I think it doesn't even have to be a job. You can just start, like, a podcast, which is, like, it's very simple. You can even join, like, a club and become, like, one of the officers for event planning. Like, that can change a lot, So yeah, that's another thing. Just, like, try to do a lot of things if you have free time. I know people might, because I get lazy too sometimes. Like, I'll just do that later in summer break. But, like, if you don't start it now, you're never gonna start. Like, that's the thing.
That's very true.
So join a lot of clubs. Do a lot of things. If you're curious about it, just start it. And if it doesn't last, then just move on. Start something new. But I think especially, like, the States, they heavily focus on experience, which I think is a great thing. They want more experience rather than just, like, records, So use that advantage of living in the States, being able to do a lot of things.
Yeah, and all it takes is one person, guys, right?
Yeah.
One person. One person, one
can,
thing.
like one person can lead to something like, oh yeah, I know this person who has this job, they're hiring. Like I've heard so many. So like I got my car because of this one person for super cheap. I was just like, dang, like networking is really nice. But like you can do a lot of things by knowing a lot of people.
Well, that's awesome. And well, to really wrap things up, the last thing we have on here is your future plans. So may I ask what your future plans are? It doesn't matter if it's in the short term, long term. What are you thinking?
Okay, so I guess I'll just say I don't know. I guess I'll just vaguely say for my long term future plans. A lot of people are asking like, oh, do you want to study? Like, do you want to work in Japan or do you want to work in the States? Honestly, I have no idea. I don't have no idea which country I'm going to be working in. Yeah. But I just do know that I want to just pursue in my communication or like coordinating event managing career. Yeah. And one thing that I learned is because my path through like studying abroad was pretty, I felt like I relied on a lot of people and I had comfort from talking to people and reaching for help. I've always wanted to be able to be that person that other people can rely on so that I can help them, you know, plan their journey out just like how other people planned my journey out for me coming to the States. So that's kind of like my big goal, being able to like help someone who needs like, if they're like so lost, they don't know what to do, I would want to be that person who can lay out like a plan for them and be like, hey, you have this choice, and this choice. Like, I can help you out. What do you need? You know, like I want to be that person because I've always wanted that kind of person coming to the States. So I think that's kind of like my big long run plan or dream, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a beautiful way to wrap up the end of the podcast, I guess. But well, thank you so much, Ami, for joining us today on the podcast. If anything resonated with you guys in any way, feel free to share it across all social platforms and tag at detour.podcast. Also, if you'd like to follow Ami with her Bilingual Buzz journey, go ahead and search Bilingual Buzz on all platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts,
and several other platforms.
I don't know. Oh man. Well, again, thank you guys for all your love and support, and I'm your host, Gary Fan, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.